Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined here by Agent Smith.
Mr. Anderson. How are you doing today?
Oh, great. I love him in this. He's just like...
Yeah, I don't actually remember what his voice sounds like, but I just remember it was...
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
He's in Lord of the Rings. The one elf guy.
Elrond.
Oh,
the king elf?
The old elf guy? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. He's the one, he's like...
As soon as you said that, my mind went spinning through all the characters. Is he like the evil wizard from the second movie? Is in the tower? Is he this guy? Oh, the elf king. Okay.
The old elf, yeah. The one that's like the one that was around during when the ring was first created or whatever. He's really old. Hugo Weaving is the actor. Yeah. And in this he plays AI that's goes into the Matrix to do things to stop people and
I got really confused for a moment because my brain is like AI, but he clearly has emotions. He's talking about how he hates the smell and everything. But I guess if it's that advanced AI, I guess it doesn't have to not have emotions. Right.
Well, he talks about how this is the evolution or whatever. We're the next the age of men is over and we are the next evolution or whatever.
Right.
So it's obviously very advanced artificial intelligence, So yeah, we watched The Matrix obviously. Initial thoughts?
I mean, a ton of the movies that we watch on here, I have absolutely no idea about besides their vague main concept. Like Terminator, I knew what the Terminator was, but that was it. Or Fight Club, I had no idea anything about it. This one, I had a firm grasp on what it was about, and I still enjoyed the movie. So,
yeah. It's. I don't know. I'm trying to think the plot is I'm trying to think of what to say. I don't know. What do you have to say about it? Just go into that and we'll...
my opinions on the plot, on the story.
Just generally everything. I don't know. Anything you want to say about it?
I mean, I like the concept because it got my brain thinking for a while of the Matrix is apparently a world, a digital simulation that they put these people in so they can harvest their electricity and blah, blah, blah. But the universe that they create itself is very interesting to me because obviously it has set rules, but it seems like those rules can be bent by just believing that they're being bent. Because in their kung fu fight scene, I know kung fu, show me. And then they go and fight, and he's like, you think that's air you're breathing? Because he makes a good point. It's not air that he's breathing. It's, he's not actually doing any of this. He's not actually out of breath. And none of that air that he's
sitting there unconscious, dreaming in a way.
But
there is no spoon.
Exactly. He believes that he needs to breathe like that, so he does. But as soon as he said that, he's like, I don't actually need to do this. Why am I doing this? And that changes the way the rules work for him. And that's so interesting to me. Because as long as you believe it, the world that they're in can change.
Well, right, because it's the only reason their prison works is because people believe it, that it's true. And he's lived his entire life in the Matrix, so even when he's out and he kind of knows that it exists, he still kind of reverts back to that sort of feeling of oh yeah, I need to breathe like this. This is normal. I'm in real life, even though he knows he's not, but his brain feels like it is. So it's still you have to like retrain how you think of things completely, you know?
Mm-hmm. But what I found really interesting is I took this like a step too far. I know this is too far. Like, I fully acknowledge that this is me just going rampant with a single idea. But what if Morpheus's belief in that he is going to find the one made it true because of the way the Matrix works?
Yeah. I think that's kind of part of how it is. Because, like, it's interesting how, like, the whole thing about the one works, where it's like, is he the one or is he not? Like, even by the end of the movie, I'm not even completely sure, you know? Like, he says, like, the Oracle told you what you needed to hear, and that is all. And it's like, okay, so did the Oracle lie and tell him he wasn't the one because that's what he needed to hear?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, or did the Oracle tell Morpheus that he was going to find the one? He was the one who was going to find the one just because that's what he needed to hear? Or it's like, you know, it's like,
Did the Oracle completely make up the idea of the one just to tell it to Morpheus so he would believe it, so he would make it true?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's like, okay, so it's... And, like, how does the Oracle have these sort of ability to predict the future? You know what I mean? Where does that come from? Like, from what I can tell, the Oracle is just a person, right? Like, a really old person who, like I don't know. You know, it's like it's kind of weird. It's like the Oracle lives within the Matrix as well. So it's not even like they're unplugged. Like, I don't know. It's just interesting.
The Oracle is such an interesting character too, because like you only see her for a few minutes. But I think, like, one of her first lines is, and don't worry about the plant or the vase or whatever. And he's like, the what? And it smashes. And she goes, now what's going to really mess you up is, would you have broken it if I didn't say anything?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, she knows what she's doing. She knows how mindfucky it all is.
Yeah.
So is she using that? Is that... Like, it hints to the idea that she could have just been messing with Morpheus to try to make him make the one be a true thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because I think from what I can tell, it seems like it's one of those things where it's like there are no real solid answers to these questions. It's more one of those things where it's like very like whatever seems right. Like, it's just like it creates an interesting discussion, but it's like, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, you can't get to the end answer because there is none.
It's just, yeah. Well, it's like it's like in The Thing at the end. It's like, oh, is one of the two people that survived still one of the thing? Is it? Are they or are they not? I don't know. The filmmaker doesn't know. It's just there for you to decide. It's kind of like that kind of thing where you're just kind of like, I don't know. Is Neo the one?
To haunt you.
Yeah, and like I don't know. Maybe some of these questions are answered more definitively in the other two movies. Like, I don't really know, but still, it's interesting to like, you know. And I would like to eventually watch the other two Matrix. Well, I guess there's 3 other Matrix movies now because the new one came out, but I have heard like the second and third one aren't like quite as good, but so I'd like to see them eventually. But
yeah, I mean, this one ends really with a tease, being like,
yeah, Neo, so that's the thing.
That little narration for Neo, where he's just like, I'm not here to tell you how it ends. I'm here to tell you how it begins. And then the movie ends, and it's just like, oh yeah, they really didn't end the story at all, did they? They just began it.
Yeah, like it's the whole ending is set up where it's like, oh, it's very clearly set up where like more stuff is going to go down after this is going to happen. Like you could watch this movie and be satisfied with just this movie and be like, all right, yeah, he's got the power to control the Matrix and he's going to go ahead and use it to save everyone. Cool. That's going to, and then be okay with it. But at the same time, it's like clearly set up for there to be sequels.
Yeah, like there's more to this story and you didn't tell it. Give me more, please.
Yeah. Well, because like I think like they mentioned things about like Zion and you never even see it, and like and I think you do see it in like either the second or third one. I don't know which one, but Yeah, I really don't know the story of the other two movies very much at all. Like I've seen the first Matrix years ago, and then now obviously, but I really don't know like what happens. But yeah, I would be interested to see them though, even if they aren't as good. Just because I'm curious.
It was also very interesting to see the movie that I always hear everyone referencing. Because I've heard, the I know Kung Fu, show me. I've heard, you think that's air you're breathing? And all this other stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this is finally, I actually know where it comes from, like, definitively.
Well, then there's probably one of the most famous scenes in the movie is like the red pill and the blue pill scene.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like, that's like a term people use now for like somebody who's like people, like a lot of like people who think they're like, oh, like somebody's like thinks they're like, oh, we're all really in the Matrix, or oh, this is all real. Not that specifically, but like they're known as like the red pills,
like,
you know?
Yeah.
It's like the term red pill is used for people like that, and it's like
you think birds are real? No, they're created by the government to surveil us. Get red pilled, bro.
Yeah, exactly. The term red pill is used for things like that.
It's always stupid conspiracy theories that are just horrid.
Yeah, exactly. But it's but I think the idea of the Matrix is very interesting because it's sort of this idea of like, okay, so the world they live in is fake, right? But like at the same time, is it? Because you live in this world, you experience things exactly the same way your brain would experience them in the real world. You go through the same emotions, you go through the same pain, everything is simulated to a perfect, exact replica of what real life would be like in a world in the year 1999, right? So in a way, it's like, what is reality? Is reality what is physically there, or is reality what you experience? So like if you experience a real life, then like how is that any different than like actually living that real life?
Yeah, it's such a like existential and complicated subject to talk about something like this. But like, your own, like, okay, here's the thing that makes this really complicated, even more so than, you might already be considering. Everything that we experience is filtered through our brain, and it's like translated into something that we can understand, right? Sound, light, our vision, all that.
Right.
But there's really nothing for us, like, there's no way for us to tell if our brains are wrong. Because our brains are just going to tell ourselves that they're right.
Right.
So it could all be fake. And we just don't know. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, we could be in the Matrix right now and we would never know. Or like...
So that makes, like, okay, if there is a second world like the Matrix, what makes it more real or more or less real than this world?
Yeah.
Because we're unsure about both already. Like
you're already... Well, that's the other question, too, is like, okay, the movie's about this, like, resistance or whatever, trying to help wake people up to the truth and fight back against the machines and whatever, and it's like... But, like, is that realistically a noble cause? Because, like, okay, let's say you win this fight, you destroy the machines, and then you wake everybody up. Well, now everybody lives in this terrible, gross, depressing world. Whereas, before they were living an entire, normal life in like might seem happy to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like weird to think like, is it better to just let people just live their lives the way they like believe the lie? Like,
right.
It's so weird to think about. Like, I don't know.
Because they might be living their life in the Matrix, but outside they're being harvested and turned into goo to feed more to be harvested. Like,
right. But they don't know that. They're not experiencing that. In their
Right.
experience, they're living a normal life. So it's like
they're not suffering from it at all.
right, it's not, yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, if you, like, from the outside, when you see that image of all those bodies just in those there being harvested, it looks horrifying, horrific.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all these human beings are being, and then, like, you see there's, like, that image of, like, they, like, what, like, there's a newborn baby, and it, like, they poured the liquid from, like, a dead person into, like, I don't know, whatever it was to, like, help get them, like, ready to start being harvested or whatever. And it's, like, really horrific imagery. But at the same time, it's like that baby is not experiencing that. That's not what they're experiencing at all. They're not experiencing any pain from that, any negative feelings from that. So is it really as horrific as it looks? You know, like that's the weird thing to like think about.
Yeah. I guess while we're on this subject, there's another point that I have to make that is just, and take this with a grain of salt because this comes from an atheist or agnostic or whatever you want to call it, and you are like strictly, well, I guess not quite strictly, but you are religious, so this might be a disconnect in opinion. Right. But I think it is important to mention, I personally do not see a difference between a world created by a god after him doing, you know, his magical mumbo jumbo and creating a world and giving you your life, and a world created by something else, or like a person who typed up on the keyboard, did some programming mumbo jumbo and gave you your world and your life. That's the same thing to me, because it because
the end result is the same, because like the world that is created is the same. Now, in specific terms of the Matrix, it's like, okay, yeah, but they're being harvested in the quote-unquote real world. So yeah, I can definitely see it in a bad light. But if none of that harvesting stuff is happening and it's just, you know, you're in a tube just sitting there, just existing in that world, but living your life in the programmed world, then what does it matter? Because at the end of the day, it's like, what really matters is like, at least seems to be like, oh, what you experience, you know? So it's like, if you're having a perfectly great and happy life and you live in the Matrix, you live from the time you're young to a really nice ripe old age, you have a great life, and then you die, like, how is that any, and then you die and then they replace, you know, your battery cell with like a different one or whatever. How is that any, from based on what you experienced, how is that any different than like if that was really happening physically? I don't know. Our world is a product of our cognition, right? Because you know, it's filtered through our brain. So if our brain is happy with it, why don't you just keep it? It's so weird, because it's like, this discussion comes in when people talk about like dreams, for instance. Like, okay, you say like, okay, dreams are fake, dreams aren't real. But like, if it feels real, doesn't that in some way make it real? At least to you. You know what I mean? Like, I've always been able to tell when I'm dreaming. So I have a disconnect in this conversation, but I always have been like, oh, I don't like this dream, I'm going to wake myself up. Or, oh, I like this dream, let's just keep going with it and see where it goes. Well, but like, let me experience this, because why not? But there are a lot of people who experience like dreaming and like don't even know it's a dream, and it's like you're in it, and it's like it feels so real, and it's like, okay, so in a way, isn't that is it? Can you consider that real? You know, like it's, I don't know, it's just weird. You have the experience and the memory of it. So I don't know. It's really weird to think about a lot of this stuff, because it's like interesting. But and there's like even people who are like, I've heard of, who are like in a coma for like 7 years or something, right? And that entire time they were dreaming, right? And they thought their dream was so real. They lived like life for the next 7 years or whatever in their heads. and like all this crazy stuff happens, and then all of a sudden they wake up and they realize, oh yeah, all that stuff that happened the past 7 years, that didn't happen. You were actually in a coma that entire time.
Oh yeah, that life that I just had, yeah, you can't go back to that. It was ripped away from you.
It never happened. It never existed. It's like,
yeah.
Like, that would be terrifying, actually.
Oh my God.
Unless you had a terrible life, unless those past 7 years were horrible, and that dream was horrible. But yeah, it's like crazy. Yeah, it's like weird, and it also raises some interesting questions of like, okay, so like obviously, like I said, there's the famous scene of red pill or blue pill, right?
Right.
And this is obviously a very big moment in the film because obviously this is the, big moments in stories are the moments that are like present the character with a choice. And it's like the choices that the character make are what defines that character, like who they are as a character. And it's like, so obviously that's why it's a really big moment. But it also creates an interesting thing of like, question of like, okay, if you were in that situation, would you take the red pill or the blue pill?
Right. Because, like,
the
Matrix presented, like, the movie, the Matrix presents the Matrix, the thing in the movie, that's confusing, but whatever, as, like, a bad thing, obviously, because, it is the villain, it is, like, the main tool used by the villain, and it is used to goopify people and harvest them. So of course it's a bad thing. It makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's made to be that in a way that, it is defined as fake within the movie.
Yeah.
So obviously, because of that, the choice of the red pill or blue pill is made out to be red pill and, take the red pill, struggle, and, throw away the life that you thought you had, struggle in possible vain to fight the Matrix, and possibly die horrifically. Or wake up the next day and live your life that you now might know is fake. Because, like, he says when you take the blue pill that you wake up the next day and you believe whatever you want to believe. So it's not like he erases your memory of it. It is just you live your life knowing that, and you either think, nah,
or
it's
at
just
least
a dream.
You could believe, yeah, it's probably just a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you're going to believe when you wake up. Especially, like, you would remember this. Like, should be clear to you, that memory.
Yeah.
So, like, you remember, you believe whatever you want to believe. And I think that particular line would really mess you up when you look back on it after taking the blue pill. Because you're like, oh, like, I can just move on with my life. But I didn't get a definite answer of what that moment was.
Yeah.
So I will forever live, like, my life not knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, like, well, and it depends on the person, too. Like, okay, you ask this question to anyone, and it depends. Like if you have like a really great life and and everything's going well, you have like a relationship with the person of your dreams and it's going great. You have, you're really successful. You have a career that you love. You're doing everything's like amazing in your life, and you're presented, and this happens. You'd be very much more likely to choose the blue pill because you'd be like, I want to go back to that.
Right.
But if
I don't
your
want
life
to accept that is fake.
Right. But if your life sucks, you'd be much more likely to take the red pill because you'd be like, all right, fine. Why not? Like, yeah. Because I think part of the thing that it implies, at least earlier on in the movie, is that like Neo doesn't really like his life that much in a way. Like, he shows up to work late and his boss is all annoyed at him. He's like, you shouldn't, and like he doesn't seem to have that much going for him. Like, he does, but like he has a career, but it's not like, other than that, he's not like, he has no like relationships. He has no like, he seems to be like lonely, so it's like maybe that informed his decision of like, that's partially why he was like, all right, this is an exciting new development in my life. Might as well go down and see what happens. Go down the rabbit hole, you know? This is interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. And the thing is, like, realistically, you don't know what you would choose unless you were actually in that situation. You know, a lot of like hypothetical situations of like, what would you choose in this situation? Like, you can say an answer, but you don't really know unless you were actually in that situation, because you say, oh, I would choose this. When the time comes, would you? You know, it's interesting. I just think that's like a really interesting part of the movie.
I keep thinking back to the Neo said, like, before he knew about the Matrix, he said that he was like kept struggling to tell the difference between a dream and reality, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I keep thinking back, like, that probably helps him a lot when it comes to the Matrix. Because if he already can't tell the difference, then it would make him believing that the impossible would happen a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can see that. And I mean, we do see that, like, obviously at the end, like, him believing in the impossible, like, helps him a lot. You know, he's dodging the bullets. He's like, the scene where he like literally stops the bullets, you know, like coming at him. Yeah.
And then he just runs, dives in Agent Smith's chest, and like explodes out of him.
That's right.
I was just like, whoa, why haven't I ever heard of this part?
Yeah, I forgot about that part too. I was like, oh okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's the thing. This movie does raise a lot of interesting, like, philosophical, like, questions and discussions.
Yeah.
I think that's the... But, yeah. So, I'm trying to think, like, what other aspects of the movie we can talk about. What about the action? Because this technically is an action movie.
Oh, yeah.
Especially closer to the end, but...
I mean, I think it's really cool. Like, first of all, the idea, like, it gives a genuine reason for them to be, like, superhuman in their actions, which is really awesome.
Right, so they can have those, like, cool shots of them, like, slow-mo jumping up in the air and then kicking somebody in the face and, like, doing all these crazy, impossible things. Yeah. Well, because, like...
The scene when they're storming the building and, like... they're just running through like this slow motion hail of gunfire, and like bits of the walls are chipping off around them and dust is flying, and they're just like running through unfazed. Just like, that's not realistic at all, but they gave like a legitimate reason for it to be like that. Yeah,
it's like things like that. And then like, I don't know, I think I think the action is pretty cool. It's like, I don't know, it's very stylized, like it's a very specific like style. There's a lot of that like slow-mo stuff and like
slow-mo, like extreme and impossible movement. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's sort of like the main style, and like that style has been like parodied a lot in things, you know.
Right.
Because I mean, obviously that was one of the, you know, this was a very big movie when it first came out. But yeah. I'm trying to think other like aspects of the movie that I don't know how I feel about Neo as a main character. He feels very much like the like blank slate type of character. Like he doesn't seem that like.
Oh right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't really establish his life too well. It was just shown as like he doesn't have any relationships. He's a hacker and he has his job and that's it.
Yeah. And he doesn't seem to have like a ton of like personality as a character.
Right.
like throughout it he's like amazed by everything he's seeing, and he's like, whoa, like, and he's like interested in like learning everything and whatever. Like we see that he has like that like determination or that like want to like do this or whatever, but beyond that there doesn't seem to be a lot to his character. Like he's very like and he doesn't even have any like intense expression or anything. He's very like, I don't know, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the entirety of his character seems to be he was obsessed with the Matrix before he knew about it, because apparently he had some idea that something called the Matrix existed, and he was looking for Morpheus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So his entire character just seems to be that obsession, and now that it's there, he's just, trying to discover more of it.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it's like, I wonder if they were trying to go for a more like blank slate type of character where it's like you could imagine yourself being, those type of characters where they're like very like,
I watched some anime. Don't worry, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. I wonder if that's what they were kind of going for.
Maybe.
Because he just doesn't seem to have much personality, I think, is the thing, But I mean, it's fine if that's what they're going for, I guess.
Yeah, even the moments where he makes like a big move or a big decision, it's always put in like vague terms. Because when he goes and decides to rescue Morpheus instead of pulling the plug on him, the reason he gives is just like, I believe I can do something to change this, and that's it. No specifics, no plan. It's just, this is what the Oracle told me, and I think this is that moment, and I think I can do it. I think I can beat the odds of it being either me or him.
Yeah. Like I would say that, like the main characteristics he has are like he's very determined and he's very like just ready to do things and get like whatever. But like, yeah, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of personality. There really doesn't seem to be a lot of personality with a lot of the characters, to be honest. Like Morpheus is just kind of mysterious and like, the way he talks.
It's pretty much just mysterious and like firm set in his beliefs and goals.
Yeah. Like Trinity, like, I don't know. She's a strong female.
Yeah. Somewhere along the line, somehow she fell in love with Neos.
I still think that was kind of a weird plot point. The whole falling in love thing. I was like, oh, that's there. Okay.
They don't even have many scenes alone together. There's just.
But it's like that kind of thing where it's like, oh, you have a male lead and a female lead. They have to fall in love, kind of thing, and you're like, oh, okay. That's
you
the
have
thing.
to like establish that before like the big fight at the end.
Like that's the motivation that caused him to come back to life or whatever. That's right, because he did like a comeback to. He was shot, and so he like died essentially, and then she like.
Yeah, he flatlined.
That's right.
Literally.
Because she literally said like, oh, the thing that Oracle told her was that she was going to fall in love with the one, and she's like, you can't die because you're the one, because I'm supposed to fall in love with the one, and I fell in love with you, so that means you're the one. And I'm like, and then he just comes back to life, and I'm like, huh?
Wait, no, it was something like.
I don't know. It was weird. It was confusing. I was like, so love brought him. You loving him brought him back to life. All right, I'm sorry. Is this like a Disney movie? True Love's Kiss brings somebody back to life? Like what? Is that what we're doing?
that whole romance is just so like shoehorned in there and like
it really is. I'm just like, okay, because it's pretty obvious that they're trying to do a whole like Jesus metaphor of like he died and then came back to life kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Like they literally have a line in the beginning of the movie where the guy that he comes in and like the guy he got paid by the guy to like do some sort of hacking thing for him. I don't really know. And the guy literally says to him, he's like, thanks. He's like, you're my own personal Jesus Christ. Like they just kind of they're like, yeah, it's very clear that he's supposed to be like a Jesus metaphor.
Right.
And then like it ends with him dying and then coming back to life. So you're like, yep, there you go. There's the Jesus metaphor right there. Okay, cool. But yeah, I was still very confused about that because I'm like, okay, so if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. He just
yeeted that rule out the window.
Because, like, I get it, like, he's the one, but, like, still, it's weird.
They should have at least tried to explain that, right? Like, oh, because he's the one, and he, you know, as his last, like, dying brave wave was like, yeah, I'm not dying, and then he came back to life because it's the Matrix. Like, at least something.
Yeah, it was true love brought him back to life. Yeah, that's that part of the movie. I feel like the movie, there's a certain point where some of the movie starts to fall apart a little bit for me, and it's like parts like that where it's like, okay, like I think the beginning of the movie I think is really good, like the way they slowly introduce everything, and until you finally find out what he finally gets out and he finds out what it is and stuff, and then you have a kind of it's like slower section of the movie where it's like a lot of training and stuff, which is like okay, but it's like we already know the main premise and now we're just kind of doing just different training stuff, and it's like, okay, whatever.
It's basically just look at all this cool shit.
Yeah,
it's like it's entertaining, definitely, but it doesn't have anything.
And then you get to, and then they go to the Oracle, which is really good, interesting stuff. You get the, you know, there's no spoon, and then he talks to the Oracle, which is good, and then you get like the some action, and then you get a few action scenes, and then it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just there's certain points where like in the movie where it kind of like lost me like pacing wise. Like I was like, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, but I did really like the moment when he first talks to Morpheus over the phone when the agents are after him.
Yeah,
Morpheus really goes, like the last thing he says is, there are two ways out of this building, in their hands or up that scaffolding. I leave the decision to you. And like, I think most movies would be like, yeah, the main character would never let himself get caught or get captured by the enemy. He would go up.
But it just cuts to him being caught by them, and you're like, oh.
Yeah,
okay.
He like drops his phone, tries to get there, and just like, nah, I'm not doing this, and then lets himself get caught. I'm just like, that's a good character, right? Because he didn't like force himself to do something insane.
Well, also, like, you think about it, like, he has no clue what's going on. Exactly. He doesn't know about the Matrix yet. All he knows, like, they're going to take him into custody. He's like, yeah, I should probably, like, he just thinks they're probably just, like, I don't know, FBI agents, or who knows what he thinks. You know what I mean? Like, they're just going to take him into custody for some reason. He doesn't even know. So, like, might as well let them take him into custody, I guess. This weird guy on the phone is telling me to do things. That's kind of creepy. Like, what?
Yeah. The only understanding is that he has is that they are after him, and that it has something to do with the Matrix, but he has no idea what the Matrix is. So he's like, yeah, it can't be that bad.
Yeah.
So, you know, his mouth gets sealed shut, and then instead he's like, yeah, I really screwed up.
I love that scene. It's like, oh my gosh, they try to get him to cooperate. They're like, all you have to do is tell us like whatever, or help us find what, I don't remember what it was. It's just like, I'm gonna give you the finger. I want two things. Or no, it's like, I'm gonna give you the finger and you're gonna give me my phone call. That's right.
Yep. I got a deal for you. Starts flipping them off.
I'm like, okay, that's okay. You know what? That's another personality trait. He doesn't like authority. He has a problem with authority. I think that's a pretty solid.
Is it specifically authority, or is it just?
I don't know. I mean, he didn't seem to really care about like the guy, his boss or whatever. His boss was like talking. He's like, you're late again, blah blah blah, and he didn't really seem to like him too much. But I don't know. It's just. Yeah. It's like, how can you talk on the phone if you can't even talk? Like, what's the point in having a phone call if you can't even talk? And then his mouth.
Right.
And they put that thing, like, in his belly button, like...
Yeah, that weird scene. And then he, like, wakes up and the girls extract him from it. Ugh.
Well, yeah, because he, like, wakes up and he's, like, in his bed and he just assumes, he's like, oh, that was just a dream. but it wasn't. They did do that, and then they later on he finds out, he's like, wait, it's still in me? That wasn't a dream? And it's like, I think the whole like opening of the movie up until the point where he gets out and he finally finds out what the Matrix is some of the best parts of the movie. I think it's just done really interesting. There's just so much weird stuff happening, and like if you watch the movie not really knowing what's going on, it would be really interesting. And then you have that like again, that's where like the scene of like take the red pill or the blue pill is, and even then you don't fully understand what the Matrix is yet when he does the red pill blue pill thing, like. And then there's the scene where he actually does get out is really interesting too. Like
his
he
first
wakes up
scene, and he's just in the pod, looking at the fields.
Yeah, it's insane. Like that's like the opening. Yeah, that although like that whole portion of the movie I think is my favorite, just because it's the most interesting. And then like the middle section is like okay, and then the rest of it's really good because of the action.
Right. It's really sectioned off into like story. Training bit to establish that he's not going to just get himself killed, and then action.
Yes, pretty much. Well, and then, pretty much. But I did kind of like I thought it was interesting, like though the whole idea of like in the final like the action scenes in well, there's like a few action scenes because there's the one where Morpheus gets captured, and then there's when they come back to get Morpheus.
Right.
So I thought like, so before that, when they get captured, just because they go to the Oracle, right? And then while they're trying to leave, they get attacked and Morpheus gets captured or whatever. But I really liked the idea, what the Oracle told him about like, only one of you will survive or whatever.
Yeah.
It just kind of made this interesting climax where like, you kind of think one of them's going to die.
Well, right. Because like usually in movies, nothing bad happens. None of the main characters will die. But then they took this character that they established basically knows the future, and they had her say, no, we're not going to do that. Somebody is going to die. Well,
okay, and
just mess with you.
If you think about it, like when the movie came out, nobody knew that there was going to be like sequels yet or anything, right?
Oh, right.
So for all they knew, Neo could have died. Like obviously now it's if you've never seen the movies, it's pretty obvious that he isn't, because there's like sequels and stuff. But and also like Morpheus easily could die because like he's the mentor character. Mentor characters die in movies all the time.
Well, right, yeah.
Like, do you even Obi-Wan Kenobi? I mean, come on, like, that's the trope, right? Like, oh, the old mentor character, he trains somebody and then he dies by the end.
Wait a second. Obi-Wan Kenobi's mentor dies, and then he dies as a mentor. He's like a chain mentor death.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They have a streak going.
That's true. Well, right, because if you look at the Phantom Menace, because I was just thinking the original Star Wars, he died, obviously. And then, spoiler alert to a movie that is, how old is it? 1977? Really freaking old. That's how, over 40 years old.
Right.
But yeah, like that's kind of an interesting thing, because it kind of, I remember the first time I saw the movie, I thought Morpheus was going to die, because like I knew Neo wasn't going to die because he's in the other movies. But like, again, Morpheus is that mentor character, so he very easily could, like, he's the type of character that, like, if a character were to die in this movie, it would be Morpheus, right? Because he's that character, so. But then obviously he doesn't, and I'm like, wait, and then Neo dies, and it turns out that he dies, but then comes back, so it's like,
oh, I didn't even realize that part. He did die. That's what okay, cool.
Right. He just was brought back by true love, or something. I don't know, which is weird. Also, let's talk about the guy, the guy who betrayed them. So, that whole plot point. So, interesting thing I was thinking about, like, so he okay, so there was like two guys who were not in the Matrix, and then everybody else was in the Matrix. He goes in, he does what he does to get like Morpheus captured, and then he's the first one who they take out, and then he shoots the other two that are out, like monitoring everything. Did he
Right.
like he did not do a good job at making sure they were dead?
Oh no! Like
Because
the guy
later on,
got
the
up.
one guy just comes back and shoots him, and he's like, "Oh," and then he's just fine. Like he's wounded, but like then he comes by and helps them and stuff, and I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah, like you
okay,
think this is your master plan coming to its fruition. You think you double tap to like make sure it's not going to mess up, right?
yeah." But
'Cause, like,
yeah, yeah,
apparently that gun killed the one guy instantly,
Yeah.
right? But the other just gets up and is fine with a big wound in his side or wherever it was.
right. He gets up like several minutes later, but he does get up. Yeah,
It was just so weird to me because it was just like, okay.
Yeah, there are definitely parts of like the climax that were a little messy in this movie, I think.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, really? Okay. But I mean,
why did this guy get up and not the other guy?
And then like
shot.
How did Neo come back to life? I still don't understand.
Yeah.
The power of again, it's like it's a Disney movie, True Love's kiss brings him back to life. He's Snow White or Sleeping Beauty or
there's a whole thing with them that they establish that they're establishing vaguely that he's the one or that he might be the one, and then at the end during that they finally reveal that he probably is the one,
right.
But they never establish what that is. They just say that he doesn't have to follow the rules of the Matrix at all. So, like, they just use that to get him to do whatever he wants, which is really cool for the action stuff after he comes back alive. But when he does it when coming back alive, it's just like, is that because he's the one? Is that because of the true love thing? What is happening?
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but whatever. Yeah. Overall, I still think it's a really good movie. There's just some points of it where I'm like, what? But that. So, anyways, back. I guess I'll go back to talking about the character, the guy who betrayed them, because I don't remember his character's name. He's kind of an interesting character to throw in there too, because it's like obviously, like each one of these people, it seems has at one point had that big decision of red pill, blue pill,
right?
Because he mentions it in the one scene. He's like, I bet you're thinking, I know what you're thinking. Like, why didn't I take the blue pill? And like, whatever. So it's kind of interesting to see that, like, how your mind can change on that as time goes on. So, like, at first he was thinking, oh, I'm going to take the red pill probably, like, yeah, I'm going to help fight back against the machines and everything. And then all of a sudden he's been like sitting here for years at this point. Like nothing has happened.
Their
war against the machines is like not even successful at all. Nothing's really happening with it. So he's just kind of like, oh yeah, I want to go back to a normal life. This sucks.
Yeah. I mean, understandably. Although everything else about him, he's an asshole.
Well, yeah, but like it's just I just thought that was an interesting kind of thing to throw, like character thing to throw in there. Like, there is a character who like regrets his decision of taking the red pill and like seeing why, yeah.
Of course, there is the rest of his character, which is just him failing to flirt with the love interest or Trinity.
Trinity. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
and then him when he's like about to kill all of them and it's like unplugging them one by one, and then he goes like really up close to Trinity's body and it's just creepy as hell and just like, please stop.
Oh yeah, no, he's he is a terrible person. Yeah, but like
like when he like went over and just like sat on Morpheus's lap just to start like taunting him even though he can't hear him, I was just so thankful because like at least it's not him being an absolute pervert and disgusting. Like, at least he's just malicious now instead of just pervertedly malicious.
It is one of those things where it's like, okay, he is a villain, so like it's okay for him to be terrible. It's like,
right,
because you're supposed to hate him anyways. So it's like, but yeah,
they did a really good job of it though.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. But yes, I just think that was an interesting thing to add, and like it adds something to it, like, oh, that's why their plan failed, because they had somebody betraying them, so it makes sense, you know.
Right.
So yeah. I mean, he completely fails because then he dies, because he fails because he didn't make sure somebody was dead. Such a simple. He could have easily done that, because, you know, if he had made sure that he was dead, he would literally be the only one. Everyone else is in the Matrix. He could have easily just gone and unplugged everyone and
there'd be nothing
succeeded.
to stop him.
Boom, everyone dead. Except, well, he wasn't going to unplug Morpheus because they wanted to get the information from him. But, like, other than Morpheus. But, yeah. You done goofed.
And I guess that was really, like, one of the only ways for their plan to go wrong. Because all they did was go into the Matrix to see the Oracle.
Yes.
And it wouldn't have made sense for their experienced team who's been doing this for, you know, at least years, possibly even decades, to slip up then, coincidentally. So, like, having the traitor in there to make them slip up is, like, a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Trying to think what other... there's some cool thing I've noticed, too, in terms of the general just design of this movie, so like the look of it. So I don't know if you noticed this.
Okay.
So the colors in the movie. So whenever they're in the Matrix, the colors are tinted green a little bit.
What? Really?
Just slightly. And then outside of the Matrix, it's like not. So like the color of the Matrix is green, right? So like when you see like the programming of the Matrix and stuff, it's always green, right? But like when you're inside, like everything, there's always a slight greenish tint to things in the lighting and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But then, yes, I just think that's a cool, nice little touch to like emphasize, like, oh, this is when you're in the Matrix, this is when you're not in the Matrix. It's like, yeah, I don't know, just an interesting little design aspect. Which, like, I really like stuff like that. Yeah,
I'm looking at pictures now, and they're showing like the Trinity and Neo walking into the building to save Morpheus, and it does look a bit green, doesn't it?
Yeah, and like all of the, pretty much throughout the entire movie, whenever it's in the Matrix, it is like slightly tinted green, and that like the lighting is like slightly I just think I really like stuff like that, where it's like they kind of pay attention to like just design, and it's always like subtle things where it's like not so blatant, but it's like it's there nonetheless. So I really like stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've even found the girl in red, like when they fake him being in the Matrix to trick him.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like there's any green tint in that one.
Right, because they're not actually in the Matrix in that scene. Yeah.
That's clever. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I'm looking at pictures from the Matrix. Some pictures from the other movies are coming up. The other Matrix movies.
This entire time, it's been in the back of my mind. When I said, when I quoted Morpheus saying, you think that's air you're breathing, something that knocked a memory loose. I forget where I heard it. Knowing me, it was probably like Game Grumps or something. But there is a parody of the Matrix. I think it's only like a few minutes long or whatnot, of just basically farting Morpheus. So I really need to watch it. I don't think I've ever watched it. I just remember whoever I heard it from was like, you think that's air you're breathing? Like, the fart sound effects.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's
I
ridiculous.
just keep laughing about it to myself.
Oh my gosh. Why? Why do people do these things?
But the way I remember it, it sounds like there's like moments throughout the entire movie that they do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it's like the whole movie where they just put like fart noises over certain scenes to make it really funny, but I found a few clips of it at least.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
But anyway, moving on.
You know you have the mind of a child when... but yeah, anyways, that was The Matrix. I don't know if you have much more to say about it. I think I covered generally all my general thoughts on it. Again, I think the beginning of the movie is probably the best up until like he gets out and they explain everything. And then the middle section where it's like training is like okay, I guess. And then the ending is a lot of cool action with some weird plot points.
I think I generally agree, except the beginning I just enjoy it for the story, the end I enjoy it for the action, which I don't weight either of the two higher than the other.
Right,
I think they're pretty equal. And the middle I think I still enjoy just because a lot of that training scene is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, and it's one of those things where like you need to have a section in the middle to kind of show that like there's a passage of time between when he first got out and when he, when the climax happens, obviously, and you need to, to establish that he went through training and, so he's ready to go, so it makes sense. It just doesn't create for the most interesting, stuff,
I mean, the one part of it, he literally lays in a chair. They say it's been 10 hours, and he goes, "I know Kung Fu, show me." And that's it.
Yeah. And then, because I think the opening is just, I think what really sells it for me is like, it's just so, it keeps you interested a lot more than a lot of the rest of the movie. It's more engaging to me just because it's so like mysterious and you're like, oh, what's that? This isn't like, how does all this connect? What's going on? It's like weird,
They
and
just give you a bunch of weird occurrences without explaining anything.
Yeah, and then you slowly piece it together, and once you figure it all out, it's like, oh, they pull the curtain away, everything, you understand how everything works, and then it's like, there's not as much to discover. So the rest of the movie, there's nothing new to like discover. So it's just kind of, like, oh, he's going to go to the Oracle, find out he's the one. And then there's some action scenes, it's like, it's not, and again, like it's not bad. Like, it's just not as engaging from a like story standpoint. It's more,
right.
But it's still good, but I still really like it. But I mean, you can definitely see why it's, as popular as it is and why it's as well loved as it is.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah. Classic from the year I was born. So.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. This movie is as old as me. Well, probably slightly younger because it probably didn't come out in February. So. But, yeah. Anyways,
older than the Matrix. How about that?
Probably by like a few months or something.
It still counts.
Like, wait, what month did it come out? Let's see. What was the release date?
This is dumb.
This is so. Wait, no. There's no point to this. But what is the release date of the original Matrix? Let's see. I don't know why I'm looking this up. March 31st. So yeah, like a month and a half-ish after I was born. Just over a month after I was born, this came out. Almost 2 months. Because I'm born earlier in February. Like, yeah, so. Anyways, that was pointless. Okay. So, yeah, I guess we'll probably get ready to close here, unless you have any closing remarks about this movie.
I'm all good.
All right, so that was The Matrix. Maybe eventually I'll watch the other Matrix movies, including the new one. Who knows? If we do, I feel like we're not going to make a podcast episode about them because, whatever. We'll have more interesting stuff to make podcasts about. But
wow, hot take.
Hot take, yeah.
Who knows? TV says that the Matrix sequels aren't interesting. More at 11.
I've never even seen them, so I don't even know. But anyways, everyone, thank you for listening to this week's episode of WABAN, of the WABAN podcast. I am Nim, and this is Cub with me, and we usually don't do that till the end. What am I doing? All right.
I thought you were actually going to shorten it like a lot and not do your whole spiel, but...
Oh, no. I am never going to script my outro out. I'm never going to do that because...
At least put like 2 seconds of thought into it. Like, just say, like, find it here. Upload Saturdays noon.
You can listen to WABAN on multiple different platforms, including our YouTube channel, which is linked in the description. It is the WABAN YouTube channel. You can also find it on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and all those audio platforms. It is released a new episode every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. That is when you can expect to listen to a new episode of WABAN. And next week, we are going to be starting a new TV show, which is going to be Legend of Korra. So next week, we are going to talk about the first season of Legend of Korra. So it's been a little bit since we did a TV show because we took a little break from TV shows for a little bit there, I think. So yeah, that'll be interesting. So we're going to talk about the first season of Legend of Korra next week. And after that, I'm not really sure. We might have a guest. We might do another movie. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But yeah, thank you for listening to WABAN. I'm Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.